We pretended to be Christians for about a year and no, 3 years. We pretended to be Christians for about a year and no, 3 years. I got involved with a church that was slightly, like I would say, apostolic light. Very similar to a lot of the stuff that you're seeing right now. Not faith, none of the faith healing or anything like that, but no speaking in tongues. But a lot of the similar things of like demanding a lot of your time, wanting all of your money, telling you that if you give them more money, God will bless you more, constantly asking for money, to the extent that one of the last times we went to the church, the pastor told us if we gave more than 10%, God would for sure give us more grace in heaven. And that was kind of like the end for us. But the church was very inclusive and it was very cult-like. So we were involved in that heavily for 3 years. And when I came out of that, I felt like, oh my God, how did I get involved in something like this? So it was a church that was in the kind of an offshoot of the Assemblies of God, which is what we're talking about today. So I do have experience in this sort of genre because my old church was like this, though not as extreme. So some of these churches take things to very deep extremes. I'd say the most famous of this world is Jim Jones. Jinger Duggar's new book, Becoming Free Indeed, is about her disentanglement, her theological memoir, but it also is this self-help book.
And so I hope that with this book, it is my goal in writing it just to be able to tell my own story. And hopefully it will help anyone who is still in that system to see how damaging and how harmful it truly is.
She thinks and believes she can help other people disentangle their faith. She says the book is in response to her book, Growing Up Duggar, and other things that came out about the IBLP, and it was prompted and written and motivated after her brother's arrest. I think Jinger wanted to separate herself from this and write a book. Where I think she misses the mark is a few places. One, she's really hard on people that deconstruct, that were so traumatized by their faith that they walked away. She likens it to people just throwing it away and taking the easy way out, which for a lot of people is simply not the truth. She doesn't offer grace. Two, she wrote a book that was very damaging of beliefs of Gothard, but she places no blame on that on herself, nor does she really apologize to the people that were impacted by the words that she put out there.
And in that book, I shared a lot of principles that I had been raised on through Bill Gothard's teaching. And I encouraged young girls to do courtship, to have certain modesty guidelines, listen to certain kinds of music. And now I look at that and say, oh, like I had promoted that, I think, because that was my only mindset. I thought that was what was going to bring success to these girls and give them a right relationship with God. And I wish I could go back to those girls who bought my other book and just say, oh, like, don't read it.
She also says she wouldn't want anyone to read that book, but to this day, the book is still purchased. You can buy the book, and I'm confident that her family still receives royalties for. So there's ways that I agree with her book, but I think there was a lot of people hurt by her book, Growing Up Duggar, and I also think she doesn't offer grace to the people that did leave the faith after a lot of trauma, not because they were lazy, but because they came to a different conclusion than her. This is a review left by someone who left the IBLP on Jinger's book. She wrote, frankly, Jinger's one-size-fits-all approach to deconstruction and faith is insulting. Some go as far to say that Jinger has left one cult for another since she joined John MacArthur's church. I do not consider all churches to be cults. I strongly disagree with John MacArthur and Jinger's picture of the evangelical community. I know that Jinger's views on the LGBTQ plus community and other non-evangelical people of faith are harmful. However, I also understand how hard it is to accept an affirming faith or navigate a more accepting world after leaving IBLP. I joined a church very similar to MacArthur's when I left IBLP and believed, as Jinger now does, for a long time. No person harmed by Jinger's beliefs owes her grace, compassion, or space to harm them. I offer that compassion in hopes that people like Jinger will one day see my own faith, my own life, and understand that God made me exactly as I am, and my faith and sexuality are not fallen or indeed in need of redemption. So just because you deconstruct
it's not the same for everyone. There's no one size fits all. And if you were hurt by growing up Duggar, it's okay to not extend someone grace that hasn't offered you grace if you left your faith because of it. If you've recently read Jinger Duggar's book and you've seen her criticism of the deconstruction movement, where she goes after Joshua Harris, listen, I just want to tell people this. I deconstructed and nobody taught me how to do it. I didn't need to write a book. I didn't need to read a book. I didn't need to have somebody tell me or pay for courses to learn how to deconstruct. I didn't need to read a book by someone who recently disentangled that thinks they know how to tell you how to disentangle to learn to do what I did. What I would recommend and what I would say to anyone that's going through the really traumatic process of deconstructing faith and religious trauma is be kind to yourself and do whatever reading and seek any therapy that you need to get to the conclusion that you get to. It's not a linear process. It took me years to finally come to a place where I felt like I knew what was right for me. And on my channel and in my work, I never tell anyone my deconstruction journey, and I never tell any people why they should deconstruct or what their conclusions should be. Because some people will feel like they can still have faith and other people will find that they don't believe anymore, and both are okay. And everyone has a right to be either of faith or not of faith. But the problem is when we tell people that you're wrong if you didn't do it like me.